We're going to make the sawtooth star block using the 4 at a time flying geese method. I have to admit, the first few times that I saw this method, it made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. So don't overthink this, just follow the instructions step by step, and then you'll come out with a lovely set of flying geese ready to make your sawtooth star. I've got my fabrics ready cut here. I've got some 3-inch squares for my 4 corners, 3 5/8 squares from my mustard, and I know that's a bit of an awkward measurement, but it does work, believe me, so stick with it. 3 5/8, and I have penciled in I have penciled in the diagonal. I don't think you can see it, but I have penciled in the diagonal there. I've also got a 5.5-inch square sunflower, and that's for the center of my sawtooth star block, and a 6.5-inch square from my cream, and it's this large square and these smaller mustard squares that I'm going to be using to make my flying geese. It's a bit hard to see the diagonal. It is marked, so I'm just going to do it again with a pen. I had marked it with pencil, which is what I would usually use. Oops. Be careful you don't do what I just did and make an odd line going off, but yep, it doesn't show through, so all is good. So all of my 4 squares are marked up with the diagonal. So first of all, I'm going to take my large cream square and I'm going to place one of my mustard squares like so, and the second of my mustard squares like so. Now you'll notice that they do overlap in the center, and that is exactly right. And what we're going to do is sew both sides of this center line with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to sew up one side and then up the other side using a 1/4 inch seam away from this center drawn line. Okay, give me a moment at the sewing machine and I'll show you what that looks like. So here's my block, sewn both sides of the line. Let's take those pins out. And I'm going to cut it along that drawn line, corner to corner. I'm going to fold these and press them. Oops, sorry. Snowy's come for a visit. Down you hop, Snowy. Oops. And give those a really good press. Make sure that they're nice and flat. And then what I'm going to do is pop my remaining 2 squares right sides together with my diagonal line running from corner to the midpoint. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to sew both sides of these diagonals. Now don't do it until you've given everything a good press, because if you try and stitch this now, you'll get a pleat here. Your blocks won't be the right size and it will be messy. So let's just plug my iron in. Get my ironing mat out. I tend to press it towards the larger triangle, as that seems to make more sense. And as always, my pressing, it's nudge, press, and then smooth it out. And that looks nice and smooth. Do the same for this one. Nudge across the fold, nudge, press nice and flat, and then smooth the whole thing out. Okay, so remember, right sides together again. Got my square on there. Just pop a couple of pins in to keep it flat. Pop them well away from the center so that your foot isn't going to get trapped on it. My diagonal line is going from the corner of the cream square to the midpoint over here. And I'm going to sew both sides of my diagonal line. So this is what we've got now. And once again, I'm going to cut on the drawn line. And this is what we have. Once again, you're going to want to press these. And then the next stage is to make them exactly the right size for our block. And for this, we need them to be 3 inches by 5.5 inches. So what you want to do is use your 1/4 inch marker on your ruler and line that up with the point of your triangle there. Okay, so this is my 1/4 inch. That would be the 1/2 inch, that would be 3/4. There's my inch. So this second marker here on this ruler is my 1/4 inch mark. So I'm lining up that 3 so I'm lining up my 1/4 inch just on that intersection where the 2 mustard triangles cross, and by doing that I'm going to give myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm also going to make sure that I can see my 3 inch line at the bottom, and that makes sure that things are nice and straight. As a double check, I'm going to use the fact that this rectangle needs to finish at 5.5 inches across. So this point should be at the halfway mark between 0 and 5.5, which would be 2 3/4. So if I move that over so that that point is at exactly 2 3/4, and just pivot it round a little bit so that I can see that this diagonal intersects at the 3 inch line, and I want to be sure that this diagonal intersects at the 5.5 inch line. So sometimes you've got to do a little bit of angling around so that you get the best line that you can. And sometimes it will not be exact. You will not be able to line up all 3 points. So you do the best that you can. I'm happy that this is as good as it's going to get. So I'm going to cut 2 sides. I ran my rotary cutter over a pin the other day, and this is why it's not cutting cleanly. I need to replace the blade, but ignore that for now. So here we are. I've trimmed my 2 sides, and I'm going to take my top right, move it down to bottom left, and then line my cut edges up with 5.5 and 3, and do my other 2 sides. Now you can see here that those diagonals don't go exactly into both of those points, and that is a shame, but we can live with it. I'm just doing another block here, and I don't know if you can see, but the diagonal line on my ruler, the one that goes from 0 right the way across the middle, that is lined up beautifully on that diagonal seam. You really couldn't ask for better. And you can see that my ruler goes right through those points. That's going to be a beautifully squared up block.